Welcome to the Next Level Life podcast with Christine Corcoran. This podcast is made for the powerhouse businesswomen who are ready to ignite their fullest potential. This is where we will dive deep into the mindset breakthroughs and sprinkle in some kick up the butt motivation so you can scale your business with confidence and clarity. Whether you're craving more income, impact, or inspiration, this podcast will be your ultimate resource for all things next level. Listen in as we have authentic conversations with game-changing female entrepreneurs as we reveal the secrets on what it takes to rise and thrive. So go ahead, ignite your inner fire, and let's get you taking massive aligned action. Are you ready to elevate? Let's go. Hey, welcome back to the podcast. Thank you so much for hitting download. I wanted to do an episode on AI and the impact that obviously it's having. I know everyone's talking about AI, but I really wanted to speak to how it really is impacting the level of standard that is expected now. And it's changing obviously how we market, how we create things digitally, how we communicate, how we're also learning. Like if I think about the people who are part of my containers, or whether you are investing in certain containers, the way that we learn is changing a lot as well. The level of information that we get access to, it's also changing the business landscape as a whole, right? It's changing the landscape of what we deem to be an expert. It's also our level of skepticism and doubt around the level of leader or expert that we're learning from. And it is honestly impacting everyone across the board, right? And so obviously it's impacting jobs, it's impacting different professions because, you know, from people like copywriters or even graphic design now with Claude Design, like it's actually causing business owners to go, okay, I'm going to go get it here cheaper rather than paying someone. And I think that people can look at this from a place of fear and uncertainty and be freaked out about what's going to happen next, or we can really recognize it for what it's causing us to do. Now, I'm obviously speaking from the coaching industry because I'm a coach. I run masterminds and containers and events, and it really is impacting us on so many levels because for such a long period of time, there's been such an influence on being a level of expert or a thought leader. Whereas now, because people can get access to so much information so quickly, there's a shadow over that, right? It's almost like, okay, does that mean that? And I remember seeing a podcast episode with Elon Musk and he spoke about like the death of the expert. Because really at the end of the day, there is going to be a powerful enough AI that'll have all the information in the world to be smarter than any expert on the planet, right? Which is eventually where we're going to get to. And so as business owners who have set themselves up as experts or thought leaders in certain spaces, there can be a hesitation to be like, okay, what does that mean for my business? And what am I going to have to do to change that in order for me to stay relevant? And I think that, you know, as much as that fear is something that we're conscious of, we want to be conscious of like how we move with the market rather than too far ahead and just ignore the fact that people still look to experts for outcomes. What I'm starting to see now is that yes, people are getting access to all this information, but what they're doing with the information matters. And they're still looking for lived experience. They're still looking for support and accountability. They're still looking for a container of people that are motivating and inspiring so that they can actually be active on the information, right? So we want to be conscious of like what it's doing for that thought leader or expert. But I think as well, there's this other element around like how we're recognizing that people are creating content off the whim with AI and how there's so much access to information and people can generate a strategy in seconds and all of that type of thing. It cannot be you. And I know and I say this every time whenever someone, like recently I had a client in one of my containers doing some follow-up with an existing potential client. And they'd already had a conversation on the phone and she was going back to them. And I said to her, don't put it in AI, share it with me. I'll help you go back as a human versus AI. And as soon as I said that, she's like, oh, yeah, I understand what you're saying. Because she's like, I already did put it in AI. And it was so salesy. It was so horrendous that she was like, I wouldn't say any of these things. And I was like, yeah, like so sometimes it's like taking away this level of humanness that we've got to be conscious of. And we also want to recognize like it's not going to know everything just yet. And so what I was saying to her, like, come back to me and let's actually find out a better way to go back to this person that's going to feel human and feel caring and feel like you actually were there in the conversation versus just using a generic ChatGPT response of like, just checking in. How did you go with that decision? Like it feels so wrong. So I'm seeing that, right? So highlighting your uniqueness and what you do very differently is obviously very important right now. But what clients are really looking for, they're looking for your perspective. They're looking for your lived experience. They're looking for connection or to feel heard or seen in their experience, to feel validated in their experience. They're looking also to leadership because not everyone has the capability to be able to get that information from AI and implement it, right? Because as much as like that you might be able to pull a strategy for your business off AI right now, it does not mean it's going to be fully aligned to you. It's not necessarily going to mean it's going to be fully aligned to your ideal client and the way that you want to do business. And I think this is what people are seeing over the last 6 months is that people have like gone to that and tried to implement certain things and then it didn't work for them. And so that's where we've got to, where we're almost like being driven in the element of like really understanding your uniqueness, really understanding the way that you want to do business, really understanding your nervous system response to these types of things. Because if you're not energetically aligned, and I mean your belief systems, your values, your thought processes, your emotions, if they're not aligned to that strategy, you're going to sabotage that strategy. It's the same thing as like a coach telling you have to do it this way. And energetically or in your body's like, no, I don't want to do it that way. But then you go and do it anyway. You override your own inner knowing and you go and do it anyway and it doesn't work. You don't get the result. And then the coach is like, oh, maybe because you did it wrong. Like, no, it's actually because you didn't want it to work. It's actually because you may have some inner fears that are holding that back. It may be because like deep down, you didn't want to do it that way because it's out of alignment with your values, out of alignment with what's important to you, right? And so you've got to have that inner discernment of what feels right for you. And I know I'm going a little bit off track here, but what I wanted to come back to is that through this new space that we're navigating, we want to look at like, where is it driving us towards and what is it taking us away from, right? So it's driving us towards being more unique, being clearer, being more specific to who you are and what you do and how you run business and your unique opinions, your unique way of doing leadership or connection, your lived experience, right? AI can't replicate you. And so that then is also how I feel like it's actually where we started. Like at the beginning of the year, I used a lot of AI for my content and for my emails and things like that. Whereas now what I'm doing is actually using, say, Whisper Flow and speaking out my thoughts and putting that into my email and just adjusting some of the grammar, right? Same thing with my content. I'm actually doing a lot more of my own content where I'm not using AI to create it at all. Some of the captions I still use like for the event and stuff like that. Like I feel like I can absolutely do that because it's really like we want to keep repeating similar messages. But with my personal content, I'm not really using AI much at all, to be honest, because I feel like it went so far out of what my message was or just regurgitated the same crap that I hated that I was like, actually don't want to put this out. This doesn't feel right for me. And then also even with like the carousels that I was creating on Claude Design, they looked nice to begin with, but there was just something that just didn't resonate energetically. And I know this feels a little bit woo-woo, but I wonder whether you start noticing this as well. When I see someone else doing the same thing where they're creating Claude Design carousels, there's just something missing. It just doesn't feel like I feel connected to the person who's posting it. And so I'm kind of leaning away from that as well. Like I don't think I've posted a carousel for ages, but I want to go back to creating more unique, authentic, real carousels because I think we're leaning more to more authenticity. So I'm sorry, I'm going off track. But what I wanted to come back to is that the other side of it is how it's raising the standard of how we serve. So whether you are a professional, whether you are a coach, whether you are creative, whether you are a consultant in some way, shape or form, a service provider, I honestly believe this is going to change the way that we serve our customer moving forward. So what I'm looking at doing is reimagining my containers and thinking about how I can utilize AI to get people to the result faster, right? So one of my containers, Unstoppable Sales, the first month was very much getting really clear on your high ticket offer, getting the language right for your ideal customer, making sure that you were really getting clear on the problem that you were solving. And it was a very big module. Like it was a very big month of learning the content and then trying to then implement it into your business. And so what I'm trying to do at the moment is build out some tools that actually support completing that side, that first module, because once we have that, then we can go to market and test the sales messaging. We can go to market and test your sales skills. And so it's much more effective. And then we can do the energetic side, which is the stuff that I love. So I want to actually get better at delivering that so it serves the customer to get to a result faster. And it's the same thing with like support and accountability. And there's other unique things that you can do with AI that allow a customer to be able to get to a result faster. I think that's where the thing is going to go. The second thing that I wanted to speak to here was the raising of the standard element. Because there is so much access to information, it's causing us to be better, right? So it's calling you forward to be like, okay, again, what I was speaking about in the beginning of the episode, acknowledging like, how are you unique? What's your lived experience? Because we are wanting, now that we're being driven with this AI element, we're being driven back to the uniqueness, the authenticity, right? And I want to hear your unique experience. And I remember having a conversation with a speaker at an event I was at recently, and we were talking about this because it's this piece of like, don't use AI to uncover your uniqueness because it cannot understand you. You have to ask the right questions to uncover your own uniqueness. And then you have to test it by taking action and getting the clarity that can only come from putting the reps in, right? The more you sit in AI and then try to go down the rabbit hole of trying to uncover your uniqueness, I guarantee you it's going to regurgitate shit that it's telling other people. So it's not going to be your uniqueness at all. And as much as you try to give it more information, which is honestly, obviously how we make it better, but I feel like it's taking away from your uniqueness because it's putting words in your mouth, it's putting thoughts in your head, and it's taking us away from our own lived experience. And it's trying to be polishing a turd the way AI does with language. And we also know that it doesn't have any type of discernment around whether it is a copyrighted piece of messaging, a copyrighted name for a program, an event, a title for a program, a course, a book, anything like that. It's not actually checking trademarks, right? This happened with someone I know recently where she had trademarked a specific framework within her business, and ChatGPT regurgitated this framework for some other coach, and this coach started using it until my friend went and actually basically said, hey, that's my framework, I've trademarked that, you can't use it. And she was like, ChatGPT told me I could. So we've got to be conscious of that. Now, I honestly think it's coming back to who you are and really uncovering your uniqueness and finding out what your new standard is, because it is causing us to reinvent the wheel and reinvent the way that we serve, reinvent the way that we show up, reinvent the way that we get a client to a specific outcome. So if I was you, rather than like I think if you're listening to this, you're not avoiding AI, right? You're not avoiding AI, but like there might be ways to be like, okay, how can I use this to actually raise the standard of the way that I deliver the result that I help people get to, right? So whatever you do within your business, rather than going, I hate AI that it's doing this, or it's taking away from my market here, or it's affecting this here, or at the end of the day, your clients are using it, but they don't have your brain, they don't have your frameworks, they don't have your lived experience, they don't have your leadership abilities. So I want you to think about like, how can we use AI to support the higher standard and help you move with the times and help you get your clients to a better result faster, right? I was saying this to a graphic designer the other day who also does websites, and she was saying like, I'm questioning my pricing because like people can quite easily create a website so much faster and good enough website for whatever standard of expectation they have, and they can do it very cheap, right? And I was like, yeah, they can. So it's the same thing with like at the beginning of the internet, right? Like there was all this, how the internet was going to take all of our jobs, right? And for some certain extent it did. And so we've got to acknowledge that that was also going to happen here. But if you were to think about it, like how could you use this as an opportunity and go, well, how can I continue to do my unique way of doing websites with her level of skill set with branding, right? How can you really double down on what makes you unique and what makes you different? And then go, how can I continue to use AI in the back end of mine so it actually supports me getting my client a result faster, right? Because there's certain ways that, yes, someone might be able to build out a website with AI, but it's never going to be as good as what you create just yet, right? So we're in this window. So really think about like, how can you use it to support the outcome? Because people don't want to wait a month to 6 weeks to 3 months for a website anymore. They don't. So you've got to come up with the time, get with the times and go, how can I use my frameworks? How can I use my skills and abilities to create unique websites that actually do work and convert in my unique way, but do it faster with AI? So then you're able to still maybe charge what you're currently charging, or you may be able to cut the time in half. So maybe you're able to deliver a website in 3 weeks versus 6 weeks. And then you might be able to then also cut the price in half because you're able to do it faster. And then you'll be able to do more websites, right? Even though you're charging less, and I'm not saying you have to charge less, because that's really unique to you, but you might be able to cut the time in half, whereas normally you would charge $4,500 for a website that might take you 3 months, right? Whereas if you can do that in 6 weeks, why would you be charging $4,500 for that? So there is questions around that we need to have with ourselves and acknowledge like what it's causing us to make changes with, and acknowledge what people are really wanting right now and move with the market. That's where it's causing us to raise our standards, or it's causing us to raise the expectation on ourselves of what we can help people do and what we can help people deliver with the tools that we now have access to, right? It doesn't change you, but you've got to change with it. Does that make sense? So I hope this episode helps you start thinking about it differently, because I don't think AI is going to necessarily replace you no matter what your service is. I think it's definitely going to ask you to rise with it and raise your standard of the way that you work, the way that you deliver your result, and the way that you show up. So I hope this episode resonates with you, and I hope you have an incredible rest of your week. Thank you for listening, and if you've found any value out of this episode, make sure you hit the follow button so you get access to the episodes as soon as they are live, and make sure you come hang out with me on Instagram. You can find me at ChristineCorcoran_coach. Have an incredible week.